When someone called the police to come and collect the body of a dead dog from the side of a busy road, the cops knew that they were in for a tough job. After all, someone had starved the dog and left it out to rot in a tiny cage. But just as it seemed that all hope was lost, one officer spotted something. In November 2016, cops attended to a scene in Austin, Texas. The incident proved to be one of the more disturbing parts of the police officer's duties. Yes, a member of the public had alerted them to a dead dog on the side of a busy road. The animal's owner had apparently dumped her in a cage and left her there to die. Although officers had some idea of what to expect, nothing could have prepared them for what they found at the scene. There, inside the cage, lay the emaciated body of a female dog. Her tiny frame was lying on top of a pile of feces. The lifeless canine was also soaking wet. Indeed, the dog appeared to be covered in rainwater and urine. Clearly, the unfortunate animal had been lying here for quite some time. What made the whole thing worse was the fact that the pup was still wearing a rhinestone collar. This signaled to the cops that someone had loved the animal at one point. Sadly, now she seemed to be just a pile of bones and matted fur. So the police began their work of removing the dog off the road. However, just then something amazing happened. Fortunately, one of the officers noticed that the pooch was still breathing, but only just. We realized she was alive, but just barely, so we rushed her to the Austin Animal Center where vets began emergency treatment. Officer Ewa Wagner told the Huffington Post in 2016. Her temperature was too low to even register on a thermometer, and she wasn't moving at all. We didn't think there was any way she would survive. Once there, vets estimated that the dog weighed a tiny 9.5 pounds. They also believed she was about a year old. Still, the sight of the skeletal canine shocked even the most seasoned animal professionals. But veterinary technician Elizabeth Mancera knew she couldn't give up on the animal. The detectives pulled up and said they had a dog who was barely alive. They handed her almost lifeless body to me and I laid her on the exam table, Mancera recalled to the Huffington Post. She was covered in feces and freezing cold and wet. I talked to her the whole time, and even though she couldn't move her body, she looked up at me with pleading eyes. I kept telling her she would be okay. Of course, the next few hours would prove crucial to whether or not the pooch survived. So Mancera worked tirelessly to give the dog the best shot she could. For instance, she fitted the poor pup with a catheter, and she gave her a warm bath and blow-dried her in an attempt to raise her temperature. Everyone thought she was going to die, Mancera admitted to the Huffington Post. During those first few hours, I just talked to her and told her she was loved and that nothing bad would ever happen to her again. I told her she needed a name and I picked Sophie. When I told her that was her name, she raised her head for the first time and looked at me. I knew then Sophie would live. Unable to leave Sophie in clinic overnight, Mancera took the dog home with her. Still, the puppy was unable to move her legs and wore diapers because she was so weak. But over the next few days, the pooch began to make a slow recovery and even took her first few clumsy steps. As word of Sophie's ordeal spread, the animal rights organization PETA offered a $5,000 reward to help locate the individual responsible for dumping her. Indeed, the group wanted any information that would lead to an arrest. However, in the meantime, Mancera was working hard to make sure the dog's future was brighter than her past. While Mancera cared for her at her home, Sophie began to gain weight until she tripled in size. She also learned to walk again and began exploring her new surroundings. In fact, Sophie became so settled that Mancera couldn't bear the thought of giving her up. It was right around Thanksgiving and I was watching Sophie gently play with my dog. She was so happy and I could see a special connection between them, Mancera told the Huffington Post. After all Sophie and I had been through, I knew she was going to be my dog. I reached down and kissed her, letting her know she had found her forever home. So in December 2016, Mancera officially adopted Sophie, and now the pair are practically inseparable. The lovable pup even accompanies her mom to work and sometimes works with animal service officers to help teach the community about animal cruelty. Hopefully then, something positive can come out of Sophie's horrific past. Certainly, no dog should have to experience the things she did. She's just living proof of some of the important work that the Austin Police Department Cruelty Unit does, said Tawny Hammond, Chief Animal Services Officer for the City of Austin. And it's easy to see how Sophie's tale is having a big impact in the community. It's still hard for me to see those pictures from when she was found. It breaks my heart to think of her cold and suffering with no one there to help her. Her owner Mansera said in her interview with the Huffington Post. But while Sophie is helping to change lives all over Austin, she's had the biggest effect closer to home. Saving Sophie has done so much for me. I have anxiety and just being near her calms me and makes me happy, Mansera told the Huffington Post. It's worrying to think what would have become of Sophie if cops had found her any later. Thankfully, after her amazing recovery, the pup is now fighting fit and ready to start living her happily ever after with Mansera at her side.